When I was, I guess, about 5 or so, I thought I really wanted to be an architect. I liked blocks and building things, but I realized pretty quickly that I couldn't draw at all. And so I thought that's not going to be a good career. And then as I thought, I sort of thought about it a little more, and by around the time I was 8 or so, I thought, being a doctor would be pretty good. And then when I was 11, a really well-meaning teacher found out that I wanted to be a doctor, and so on a Saturday, he took me to visit the third-year medical students' gross human anatomy lab, which was they were basically using these circular saws to cut open dead bodies. And I remember I'm 11, and I still remember the smell of it and just seeing people cutting open dead human bodies. I was like, I'm not going to be a doctor. So the Franklin Williams Commission is really it's a wonderful commission. They are, I think, now more vital and important than they've ever been. And receiving the Breaking Barriers and Shattering Ceiling Award is obviously, very special. But I can't say I've really ever set out to shatter a ceiling or break a barrier. I've set out to try and do, good. First as a judge on the Court of Appeals and now as chief judge. So there's a sense in which I'm just trying to do my job. But when you sort of step back from yourself and you look at sort of the way somebody on the outside would look at it, then, I understand what the award is about and I understand why it's meaningful. But there aren't times when I sit and say, well, this must have looked different, at least to people on the outside. For example, when I was on the high school debate circuit at Harvard, one of my coaches, the assistant coach, told me that a judge who was the head of the program at a different school who had judged around that I was in, said, well, where that kid is really great, but, I just can't vote for what the word came next. So, there are things like that, and I tend to sort of think that's somebody else's problem, it's not my problem. What you end up hoping for is the people a generation after me will have an easier time, and the people a generation after that will have an easier time. And that at some point we get to the place that Dr. King hoped we would all get to, where it's the content of your character and how well you do your job that determines who you are.
My parents immigrated to the United States from India in the 1980s and ended up in Oklahoma. So that's where I was born. And when I was a teenager, my family moved to Queens, which was a huge culture shock for me, but eventually I came to love New York, loved being from Queens, and I've been here ever since. I went to college at St. John's University in Jamaica, Queens, and I studied English with a minor in Spanish while I was there. And one thing that I realized I loved was kind of the reading, the writing, the research aspect of being an English major. And so I thought that that combined with my love of history and politics could make me well suited to a career as being a lawyer. And so I started to explore the possibility of law school and eventually decided to attend New York University School of Law. After I graduated, I started my career here at Kramer-Levin. People would often tell me learning the law is learning a new language, or it's going to change the way you think. And at the time I was a little bit skeptical because I didn't think that 3 years of law school would change me in that many ways. But I realized that whoever said that was completely correct. I realized how complex of a system we have. Being a lawyer gives me special access to that world. I know how to navigate that system, but not everybody knows that. Not everybody has access to that sort of knowledge. So that power imbalance that flows from that is really what made me focus on maintaining an active pro bono practice. One thing that doing this work has reminded me over and over again is just how great the need really is. For every client that we help or that I'm able to help, there's hundreds, if not thousands more who need that sort of assistance. I'm very grateful to the Franklin H. Williams Commission for recognizing me for this award. You know, New York is a huge legal market. There's a lot of lawyers in New York, and so many people, dedicate themselves to this sort of work. And to be recognized, pretty early in my career for the work that I've been doing is very, very special to me, and I'm so thankful for that.
I grew up in Rochester, New York. Both of my parents were active in the community and active in politics. The very first speech I ever went to was the March on Washington in August 1963, Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. I wasn't born yet, mind you, but my mother was pregnant and she and my father went to that march. Unfortunately, I don't remember much of the speech, but I heard he did a pretty nice job with that one. I went to the University of Buffalo Law School here in Buffalo. Our presiding justice of the Fourth Department, Gerald Whalen, when he came in January of 2016, he made it a priority of his to diversify our court, the staff, the entire staff. We've made, under his leadership, great strides in diversifying our court. The number of minorities on staff has increased significantly. The New York State Bar Association runs a statewide mock trial competition at the high school level every year. It struck me that there were very few black and brown kids participating. All the suburban schools had teams. The private schools had teams. There was not a single team from the city of Rochester. So we at the Fourth Department set out to change that. We got a couple schools to agree, and we recruited some kids who were interested, and then we started coaching them up.
Mock trial tournament is scheduled for later this month. But it's been decades since a team from Rochester City Schools has taken part. And that is about to change.
We want all the kids in our community to have the same opportunities. If they want to be a part of a mock trial, to see what it's like to be a lawyer, we want them to have that opportunity just like their counterparts in all the suburbs. And we just want to expose them to it. It may be, some say, this is a lot of fun, but I don't want to be a lawyer, but they have a lot of fun and they're getting a lot out of it. We have converted a few kids, and now this is what they want to do with their lives. And these are high school kids, maybe they'll change their mind. But if we can offer that same opportunity to every schools in the city of Rochester, it can't help but to increase the chance that we're going to have a more diversified legal profession in New York. I know it seems a million years away for these kids, but I can say that the lawyers and I are really looking forward to the day that one of our students on our team actually appears in front of me in a real courtroom, not just in a mock trial, but at a real trial.
Although I claim High Point, North Carolina as home, I was raised in Brooklyn with my mother, my father, my sister, my brother. Early 90s, my brother Richard called me and said, "Stephen, there's a test that's coming out and I want you to take it." He said, "It's a test to be a court officer." He said, "That's the job Wanda had and Wanda loved, and I think you'll be good at it." So I took the test, and almost 27 years later, thank the Lord, here I am. I am a court officer today because of my dear sister Wanda. And unfortunately, she became ill. She passed in 1992 and never saw me put the uniform on. Empathy, compassion, respect, courtesy, understanding. They're simple words, but when you apply them, it makes a big difference in people's lives. And especially in a family court where people deal with so many heavy issues. I'm thankful and privileged to be a court officer, but I also look at it as a responsibility for me to help people in the way that I can. I try to promote a positive, supportive work environment by being accessible, letting people know that I care, and that if you have anything you want to talk about, it doesn't have to be work, it can be personal. I'm someone that's willing to listen and to try to help. I did not even know I was under consideration for this great honor. No idea. I mean, what you see here is a product of so much that's come before. My parents, my grandparents, because I didn't do anything to be here, but yet I am. And that's because of them and my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and I'm so very thankful for that. My first day on the job, I walked into the old courthouse, walked into a courtroom and a lot of people there, and in the back corner I saw somebody sitting down, and I wanted to make my way to that person. And when I finally got there, she stood up. I said, "Good morning," I introduced myself, and that was that. That officer is my beloved wife, Shanae, and I am so happy to say that. Early February, the first Black Chief Justice of the state of New York, the Honorable Rowan D. Wilson, invited me to come speak at the State of the Judiciary. What an incredible honor. And now this is happening. I'm just an incredibly thankful brother, and I'm so thankful to my Lord and Savior and to all those that helped make all of this possible.
I grew up in Harlem. It was during the 80s and the 90s. The 90s were tough, but being the only child with two overprotective parents, I didn't really get to experience any of the harmful things that could have occurred in my life. I got involved in the court system by taking a test. I took the test, I passed it. I was recruited to go to Staten Island. I had a great deputy county clerk, and he said to me, "You've never been redlined, you're always on time, I know you're a single parent, and you're coming from the Bronx." He said, "So I'm gonna try to get you something in the city." And that's how I ended up at OCA the first time I'm working for Court Security Services. I became involved with e-filing because I had been a court analyst for like 20 years. The opportunity came open, I applied for it, and I got the job in my current title, which is Principal Court Analyst. I love e-filing because it's a part of helping someone do what they need to do. Sometimes you need to pack a lot of patience, but it's definitely helping someone else. I became involved with the Franklin H. Williams Commission because I saw news clips show them walking around Riverton. And I was like, Riverton, that's where I live. But most people don't even know that Franklin H. Williams resided there. And it was owned by Metropolitan Life Insurance and created because they wouldn't allow the post-war wives of color to move into Stuyvesant Town. So they sued Metropolitan Life Insurance. So part of the lawsuit was that they would build us a complex uptown in Harlem that would look similar to Stuyvesant Town for African Americans. We were built out of social justice. Mary Lynn asked me would I mind getting some signatures for the code naming of the street, 136th and 5th Avenue. And of course, me being who I am, I said, of course I will help you. So I spoke to over 100 people and got 100 signatures. And I was proud because he came out of Riverton. That's history. I'm actually very honored. I saw the names of others that will share the platform with me that day. I was like, wow, these are giants. Especially Jay Johnson, Chief Judge Wilson. I was just honored because those are people that I look up to, those that have fought for social justice, those that are still fighting for social justice, something that is dear to my heart.
I grew up about 70 miles north of here in a little town you've never heard of called Wappingers Falls, New York. I would say that I had caring, nurturing parents who instilled in me early on, though it took a while for me to learn it, a strong work ethic and a strong sense of my family history. Every person has what I believe to be a moment of a political awakening when you realize and you see the larger world around you. For me, that was the year 1968. I was 10, going on 11. You had the Vietnam War, you had King's assassination, you had Robert Kennedy's assassination, you had a presidential election that year. That year we got a color TV set. And I remember watching the Republican and Democratic National Conventions live and in color in the summer of 1968. It was also the year of Apollo 8, first men to orbit the moon in December 1968. And I was awakened to all of that in the year 1968 and became fascinated with it. I was a lackadaisical high school student. My father grew up on the campus of an HBCU, Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee, because his father was president of Fisk University, Charles S. Johnson. And so my dad, as I was finishing high school, had the idea of sending me to an HBCU. Once I got to Morehouse College in the 1970s, and I saw all of these deeply ambitious black men that I was surrounded by, I decided that I wanted to go to law school and become an attorney. And I had a twin objective: go to law school, be a courtroom advocate, but also possibly go into public service. I have seen firsthand in my professional life the virtues of diversity. When decisions are made, when policy is made, when verdicts are rendered in an environment that is diverse, we are stronger, the decisions are made healthier, the decisions are more sustainable, policies that are enacted are more sustainable in rendering justice, frankly.
I grew up in a housing project in the city of Buffalo. I attended an integrated junior high and high school. And there was racial tension, and they didn't want the African American children to attend that school. I lived with my mom, and my mom suffered from mental illness. So there were times that I lived with other families, thus foster care. So that developed my sensitivity to certain populations of people that interact with the legal system, and my need to be fair and to treat everyone fairly. I learned that the legal system was not always a place that you found justice. There would be law and there would be justice. And they would be sometimes cousins at best. And that's why diversity and equity and inclusion is so important to me, because I know what it means to be excluded. I know what it means for people to simply look at me and think that I'm not capable of doing something that someone else did simply because they're a different complexion. And if you look at the members of my family, we cover every shade of the rainbow. You don't get anywhere by yourself. Someone helps you. You have to turn around and bring someone else up. You have to lift as you climb. I believe wholeheartedly in the mission of the Franklin H. Williams Commission. I believe in that. I embody that in my life. Sheila Abdul Salam, I knew her story, and for her to become the first woman of color to sit on the New York State Court of Appeals, which is the highest court, was to me such an honor. So I am certainly honored, I'm inspired, and I'm going to express my gratitude by continuing to do those things to help others that enabled me to get that award in the first place.
The Center for Elder Law and Justice was actually part of a larger organization called the Legal Aid Bureau. The Department of Senior Services asked that we spin ourselves off into a separate organization that focused on the issues pertaining to low-income older adults.
Over the many years, it morphed into much more than that. And frankly, we did a name change to be more particular to what we do, which is much greater services than when it started.
So our programming has changed, obviously, but the mission is still focused on older adults. One of the things I think we try to always keep in mind is that aging is different for different communities. And I think just like society at large is coming to realize that different communities have different needs. So one of the things we do here is we have a mobile legal unit. We go out to anywhere in the 11 counties where we provide direct legal services, including the city of Buffalo.
We're talking about people who either don't have the physical means to get to us. We're talking about people who don't have the services available to them, either financially or otherwise, to obtain Wi-Fi and computers and things of that nature. So we'll go to people's houses.
We go to various parades and festivals such as Juneteenth and the Hispanic Parade. So we want to be part of the communities we serve. We want people to feel comfortable with us and comfortable with our staff. I think that after what we experienced in Buffalo on May 14th, the horrific racist shooting really opened a lot of people's eyes to the way we provide services. I'm on a weekly call with a lot of community leaders, and what we were hearing was that they were happy that we wanted to help as white people, but that we needed to send Black and brown people into those communities. They had just experienced this terrible event, and they were understandably nervous about interacting with us. And for all the good that we wanted to do, that's part of the equation too, is hiring people who look like the communities that we serve. And that is an initiative that we're working on here all the time.
Karen and her staff are incredible. Frankly, I begged to be on their board for many years because I was so impressed with the services that they provide.
We're very proud that we have this award. We feel like we put the work in, and we talk the talk and walk the walk. We want to listen to the communities we serve and give them what they need. And I think moving forward, that's what we will continue to do.
My journey started 18 years ago when I was in my intro to law class, and my college professor encouraged us to apply for jobs in the courts. I applied and I got hired. After maybe a few years, there was a promotional job here to work for Commissioner Sunshine as a senior court analyst, which is also her administrative assistant. I got the job and I love it. My favorite aspect here is the helping the community. People come in and they're scared. They're scared of coming to any courthouse. So I try to give them a direction on where to file their papers, how to look up their cases, and just make them comfortable so they have a little bit more confidence here in the court system. I've been blessed with 3 amazing children and an amazing career. I work on committees and organizations that give back to our community. My professor in college made sure that he shared his knowledge of the court system with us and the jobs that were available to us. So I try to install that in young children. A part of my role here with the commissioner is jury and community outreach. So I meet a lot of people. In 2016, I received the Employee of the Year award from the 2nd Judicial District, Supreme Civil Court. Also, I received the Citation of Merit from the Borough of Bronx. It's a nice experience. I'm a huge fan of fraternal organizations. I believe that everyone should join a fraternal organization that represents their culture so you can share your culture with everyone around you. But most importantly, I believe that you should join a fraternal organization that doesn't represent your culture so you can learn new perspectives on others.
I am honored to be receiving this prestigious award named after the late Honorable Richard B. Lowe III, who led the Commission in its mission to advance justice and whose life was an inspiration to so many.
I was born in Detroit, Michigan, of which I'm always proud because it was, Motor City and the music city of the world. We moved to Buffalo, New York, when I was about 8. With my mother's push, she was very into education. Education is going to get you where you want to go. I went off to college to become a social studies teacher. And I was, in fact, a social studies teacher for about 3 years in total. I was doing welfare rights work and thought that we really ought to have a lawyer in this group. And that kind of sent me off to law school. Jesse Jackson ran for president. Now, why that's so significant is it got me into political work. I did a lot of work with the club for a bunch of years. And they surprised me one day saying, "We think you ought to run for judge." To which I said, "I don't think so." The thing was, I didn't really like judges. I was a lawyer, usually representing people who were not, in my mind at the time, favored in any way by the court system. I didn't want to be one of those people who I would have disliked. Having obtained the position when I was elected, I found that it was a powerful position, needing strength in terms of your knowledge of the law, compassion for whatever the issue was before the court. It was another one of those really right decisions that I wasn't so sure was right at the time I made it. The work of the Franklin H. Commission and the need for it became important because you have to push to get what you want. As much as the Constitution said all men are created equal, you only have to exist to know that that's not true in the United States, and it certainly was no more true in the court system than in the rest of the country. I feel it is a real honor to receive this award because it reminds me that I did something that mattered. If we treat people, as the Golden Rule says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, it would be wonderful. But that don't happen. So the causes have to still be fought and worked for.